Hi all, welcome in. Pleasure to have you all here. My name is Jay Beinman and I'm a fourth year medical student at UCSF. And on behalf of UCSF's Disability Advocacy and Support Alliance and our Disability and Chronic Conditions elective, we are thrilled to be able to invite patients into conversation with us today as healthcare professionals. We are so excited to have MS Confidential come speak with us, for the privilege to hear frank and direct conversations with patients with multiple sclerosis and myalgic encephalomyelitis and chronic fatigue syndrome, to learn about how they experience their chronic conditions and how they experience the healthcare system. In particular, we are fortunate enough today to be able to feature Ryan Pryor, an advocate and journalist that has recently released his book on his experiences with long COVID. We look forward to hearing the insight of these patients so that we as students can grow into providers that can truly listen and support our future patients. Please give a warm welcome from behind your screens as we welcome MS Confidential.
And welcome to all of you at UCSF. We are so thrilled to have you here. Thank you for taking your time, your energy, and spending an hour with us, or 45 minutes. This is thrilling to all of us. As Jay mentioned, MS Confidential actually gathers monthly for candid conversations about life with MS, and by default, other chronic illnesses as well. We are thrilled to have all of you join us today for this special topic called It Takes a Team, Patients with Providers. So I think this one will be relevant for all of you. Our three regular panelists are all in various stages of MS. We have Elizabeth Jamison, the director and brainchild behind MS Confidential. She is an artist, writer, former attorney, and a patient advocate extraordinaire. I could go on. There are so many wonderful things that Elizabeth has dived into in her lifetime. JamisonFineArt.com is her website. If you haven't been there yet, go there. Kyle Cronick, he is currently studying for his master's in accounting with future entrepreneurship goals. He has also been a powerful voice in the MS Instagram community. That's how we found him. And now he's a powerful and sort of often comedic voice with us on MS Confidential. If you want to visit his recently hacked account on Instagram, it's at Gotta Keep Going, but there's still some really good things over there. And then Annie Brewster, she is assistant professor at Harvard, practicing physician, and founder of Health Stories Collaborative, amazing nonprofit that is really working to help patients and providers understand the power of narrative medicine. She also just published an important book called The Healing Power of Storytelling, full of exercises, reflections, writing prompts, and stories from other real patients. And then, as Jay mentioned, we have Ryan Pryor with us today. He is a health, science, and wellness journalist who was based at CNN's world headquarters during the pandemic, and he is also a 5-time Stanford MedX e-patient scholar and lives with MECFS. And his book, which comes out November 15th, you can pre-order it, but it's not quite out yet. He goes into an in-depth research, journalism investigation journey and the book is called The Long Haul, Solving the Puzzle of the Pandemic's Long Haulers and How They Are Changing Healthcare Forever. I think this is an important book, and I hope that every physician takes this up as an opportunity to understand what's happening, not just with long COVID, but with all post-infection illnesses like Lyme. The list goes on. So anyway, Ryan T. Pryor is his website, if you want to check that out or pre-order his book. My name is Kimberly Warner. I am the founder and director of Unfixed Media and co-producer of MS Confidential. And I'm just here to keep the conversation flowing. I also chime in sometimes with my own chronic illness experience. Our panelists will begin by discussing a specific question, and you are welcome anytime, like right now even, to chime in with questions and comments. We won't save those till the end. I'll keep my eye on them, and we'll just bring your questions in as the conversation rolls. And we love engagement. So let's begin. That was long-winded. Life with difficult to treat chronic conditions like MS and ME/CFS are constantly changing due to their progressive and challenging natures. It is critical for providers to establish a foundation of trust with their patients and, at the very least, recognize the vulnerability that each patient experiences when in a clinical setting. People living with chronic illness and disability often feel that they are treated as a disease to be fixed, rather than complex human beings who are faced with their lives being in chaotic flux. While addressing the physical symptoms is vital, patients often feel ignored if the treatment plan is not balanced with their own values and priorities. Patients feel dehumanized when their concerns are not included with the physician's own medical priorities, and in turn, makes patients feel unsafe, powerless, and invisible in the clinical setting. These feelings disincentivize patients from disclosing some of the most burdensome impacts to their physicians, such as bladder and bowel issues, sexual dysfunction, and depression. The list goes on. If a patient does not feel emotionally safe with their physician, issues will not be divulged fully, honestly, or even at all. So, Elizabeth, I want to start with you, since you wrote that beautiful intro. Any part or sentence or phrase from what I just read that really resonates with you, or something you want to start off this conversation with?
Well, I think, for one thing, thank you all for being here. Really, it's my dream to be here, and I can't tell how delighted I am and happy I am to be here today. My one message, I think, is physicians. w- I would like physicians to really take into the fact that we, as um, patients, when we appear in the clinical setting, we're vulnerable. And sometimes vulnerability means we feel invisible to physicians, as well as other healthcare providers, and powerless in dealing with our illness. Because our illnesses are always very complex, and we are chaotic, messy people, as we're normal, messy people. And I think that needs to be understood. We're not like normal patients. So that's it.
Can
Thank
I
you
just
for,
ask, Elizabeth, and then we'll segue to Ryan, Annie, or Kyle if you have anything to add to that. But how does a physician convey to you that they understand the mess of it all, and the challenges, the complexities?
well, they need to, well, all I can talk about is, excuse me if I'm long winded, my gynecologist, for example, never really looks at me and never really engages me as a complex patient. She says, you're a quadriplegic, you're in a wheelchair, and you can't have a mammogram because my breasts don't fit into the machine. And I say, oh, but that scares me. And she said, well, too bad. She doesn't say too bad, but she said, there's nothing we can do about that. And then bye. Then the appointment ends. And I feel like, gee, I'm upset. I need time to talk about what it means to me that I can't be screened for breast cancer because of my wheelchair. So this time eye contact, um, feeling like she cares. She cares as human being to human being.
It's that simple.
Well, simple,
Yeah.
not simple,
Mhm.
hard
Mhm.
on both parts. both the provider and the patient.
Annie, I want to hear your perspective as a patient and a physician. Is that extra effort to make eye contact? Is that sometimes challenging?
For me, I would say eye contact is never challenging. I think that's essential. Eye contact is key. And I don't like it when doctors don't look at me, and I always try to look at my patients, but I will say I understand the challenges. I'm really like conflicted on this topic because I really come at this more as a patient and knowing what it feels like to be on the other side and to be negated. But I also know what it feels like as a physician who is under a time crunch, on a schedule that's really tight, totally overwhelmed. And even if it's not just logistically overwhelmed, sometimes it's emotionally overwhelmed because sometimes the problems are so big that we can't fix them. And we're sort of trained to think we're supposed to fix them. And then that can make us feel like failures and like frustrated and even angry at our patients sometimes. And so I think there's something wrong in the training there that makes us think that healing means curing or fixing, and that we're not as comfortable as we should be with saying, I don't know, but I'm just going to be with you in this moment and let's try to figure this out together.
That needs to be normalized. Just saying,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can work on that with you, help you through this, give you the tools that are in my toolbox, but
Absolutely. And that's what I like,
I'm
since
not
I've
the
been a
end-all
patient,
be-all.
I've learned that more, like that I'm much more comfortable as a physician saying like, I don't know. And because I love it when my doctors are honest like that. I hate it
Yeah.
when I feel like they feel like they're failing and they just want to push me out the door because they can't possibly solve it. But I don't want them to solve it. I just want them to be with me.
Yeah.
I felt the same way.
Ryan, what has your experience been with MECFS and physicians, the whole gamut? I would imagine it's challenging because a lot of physicians don't even recognize MECFS.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that wearing one hat as a patient and then a couple other hats as a journalist, and then working in public policy for a think tank, and just the general solution is in this role I now occupy as part of this Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, that the needing to use a social model for disability rather than a biomedical problem. So these are lives to be celebrated and not problems to be solved. And when viewed through that lens, and just and I think Elizabeth wrote that so well about the constant state of flux. So like change is the norm, and many people with post-viral conditions experience relapsing, remitting disability. So they could be okay for a couple hours a day, or not okay for a couple hours a day, or good for a couple weeks and not good for a couple weeks. So those are key components to, I think, not just doctors working with patients, but really society working with disabled people, and understanding that humans are messy, like as Liz says, and acknowledging that and building a society that's more accommodating toward disabled people is important. And so doctors should be, or doctors and society in general should be working in a way to build around these problems, particularly when these are problems that don't have a specific biomedical solution.
Do you feel, and this can go to any of you, I'm curious, Ryan, I agree that the whole society needs to collectively recognize humans as more messy. And I think we've done I don't know how long in our own evolution as species, we've sort of self-included, tried to go on the straight and narrow perfectionistic path. Where in the medical education can there be some inclusion of this? I mean, you guys are there in medical school, 8 years trying to solve problems. How do we integrate this into the medical education? What do you wish that your health professions, the education covered that you miss? Annie, what did you miss? Or what do you wish that your doctors learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, I think that the model is sort of, we're trained to be detectives and come up with a diagnosis and solve a problem and then be able to fix it. And there have been so many wonderful advances, of course, in medicine. So we think that we can fix everything, but there's so much we don't understand still. So I wish that we'd been trained more in medicine to, like that it's a being with people in suffering rather than fixing suffering, and that we can be guides in that process, but we are not necessarily going to have the answer, but we have knowledge that can help us guide. We do have training and knowledge that can help us guide people. But I think it's so easy to feel powerless in these like 15, 20-minute appointments when you know there are expectations upon you, because the patients have expectations. And I speak from the patient point of view as well. You've waited all this time for that appointment. You know, you have a lot going on. You're feeling vulnerable. You have this like tiny chunk of time and you want to use it well. And then you feel blown off and not listened to. And then it's easy to feel angry. And so the system is like fueled by, I don't know, the expectations are wrong on all fronts, I think. So I don't know. To me, I know that it's like a huge systems issue and it's a societal issue, but I also think we need to break it down to the very small level of like in that room.
I
when-
think it can be
Yeah.
broken down simply to
Break it
shared
down.
decision making.
Yeah, shared decision making.
I think that simple thing right there.
Yep,
will be
I
so
agree.
huge.
Yep, and just like maybe start. And I don't think I've always done this as a physician, but like get on the same page with the patient. Like, what is it you want to, what do you want in this visit? What are you hoping to accomplish?
So many doctors don't ask that or inquire.
Kyle, what question would you like to hear your physician ask you?
I like I just said, those three words, shared decision making. I just recently went to a neurologist appointment and I told her what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily want to continue with the disease modifying therapy she had me on. It doesn't really align with how I want to go about this. And anything I brought up that I wanted to do, she just dismissed and said, okay, we're just gonna do this. I'll schedule for this and we'll do this. You're scheduled for this. There you go. See you in 6 months. So where
That
was
doesn't
that
work.
shared decision making? Like,
Right.
but I had I got a new doctor, this integrative doctor, a few weeks ago. I was telling y'all about. I spent 3 hours with this guy one-on-one, going through my history extensively, and it was the epitome of shared decision making. And he came up with a personalized plan for me, since this chronic illness is so all over the place with a myriad of bizarre symptoms, and everybody is ranging in severity. So it does kind of need to be customized. So there's that shared decision making. I was on board with what he was saying, but I that's one in maybe 20 doctors I've seen.
And for me, I'm interested in shared decision making and also being human. For
Mhm.
example, my OB/GYN who didn't say, "Gee, I'm so sorry, you can't have a mammogram. It's not designated to people in wheelchairs."
Yeah, what
Just say,
is that?
"I'm sorry, this is terrible. Just, it is what it is." She can't fix it, but she can say, "I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
really bad. I am sorry." So it conveys humanity and empathy to the
Yes.
patient. You just say, "I'm sorry," or if it's not sorry, what a drag.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
human to human.
Yeah.
Do you know, I think when I was in primary care, I spent a lot of time apologizing to my patients and saying like, I'm really, really sorry. Like, this is so broken. And like, we're on the same page, we're on the same team, and it's bad for everybody. This is terrible. Because I think we're often pitted against each other, sort of. I think that, you know, we can almost have like an antagonism develop because patients are feeling really frustrated, justifiably. I have been one of those patients, but so are doctors. So I don't know. I think, I think that we also in medicine are trained to sort of like never say anything bad about anyone else in medicine, or like there's this whole sort of protect your colleagues thing that I think can go too far. Like, I think we need to be able to say like, no, that's not right. And we can do better.
I'll just add that.
Go ahead.
Oh, just that, the most famous book about chronic fatigue syndrome is called Osler's Web, and it is reference to Sir William Osler, famous medical educator in the 19th century. And he was famous for talking about this concept of talk to the patient, listen to the patient, and he'll tell you what the disease is. And I think that especially in long COVID and then ME/CFS, that's particularly important just because there's less ability to use objective diagnostic testing to make this make the confirmation of the illness. So and also just working directly with the patient in any sort of patient-centered care with shared decision-making being a really important component. It's important, and so that was a reference I make in the first chapter of this new book I have. It's the listening to the patient. They'll tell you what the disease is, and then I argue that illness exists in the space between what someone's dreams are for their life and then what their actual capacity is. So that delta is where disease is, and so if a doctor can ask a patient what are their dreams, what are their preferred outcomes, they want to go skiing with their grandkids, or they want to travel to Europe, understanding what those goals are, and then making sure to help target the treatments to achieving those goals. And that's where I think you can best diminish the human experience of disease. That's
beautiful. And I love that. It reminds me of the Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. She talks about how curing is too small of a strategy for dealing with the loss that accompanies chronic illness. And so curing isn't just it. Like you said, Ryan, there might be some dream that they want to achieve, and the doctor, without knowing that, is never going to help bridge that gap. And I think listening and then asking those really deep, penetrating questions that might be as much as like, what are your dreams for life? But I want to segue. We have a really good question over here too. And to anybody that's listening, you can drop your questions in any time. So thank you for Stacy for bringing this one up. Regarding questions, as a physical therapy student, we are taught to ask screening questions, some of them very intimate, such as, do you experience any bowel bladder issues? Do you experience any issues with sexual dysfunction? And a whole list covering the body systems. Do you all find this comprehensive screening questionnaire helpful to open the door to bringing up intimate questions you may have, or do you think there's a better way? It's an excellent question.
That's a good question. I don't mind at all if it's like genuinely asked. If someone's just like going through a checklist and they want to just get through it, check, then it annoys me. But if they actually really want to know, I'm good with it.
Kyle, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, some things like bladder and bowel dysfunction is certainly relevant with physical therapists for what I'm going for. For bladder stuff, we're working on pelvic floor exercises. So it is absolutely relevant for them to ask about that. And I'm not perturbed in the slightest.
No, I will add though, I think, and I say this from a place of having done it wrong, like we need to be very careful about how we ask those questions. Like if we say like, oh, no bowel or bladder symptoms, right? No, if we don't make it an open-ended question and sort of answer it for somebody, then it just increases shame, So I think that happens a lot. Like, people just frame things like they're reading through a list. Oh, you don't have this or this. You don't have that, right? You don't have that. But that's not the way to ask it.
Right.
Yeah, and especially if you don't feel like they're really listening. I mean, this is the last thing you want to bring up if you're, got someone's back to you. It's like, hey, guess what? I also want to talk about my sex life. So we have Lindsay is jumping in, and she's a physical therapy student and is wondering if any of you are comfortable sharing. Have you had experiences with physical therapy, and what was that like? What can future physical therapists do to make your experience with us better?
I love my physical therapy. I go multiple times a week. I've been going for as long as I've needed to. And I don't think I've had one physical therapist that I can say a bad thing about. That is a highlight of my week. So
what do you love about it? Like something specific? What do you love?
Like the connection. I don't know. I really connect with my physical therapist. Yeah.
I love human touch.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's right. But I don't know. I love physical therapy. So
yeah.
Elizabeth,
I've had positive too.
You do?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, what about you?
I've had a not so good experience with my physical therapist. They've been very uncreative, and what I deal with and need so much of my life are people who are trained at the Spinal Cord Injury Center, which they're not physical therapists, but they specialize in innovative ways to exercise people with spinal cord injury. I love them, and I go 3 times a week, every week, to exercise. There's not a lot of exercise I can do as a quad, but the ones that I have access to, I love working out. I love working out. It's so important.
Yeah.
But the general physical therapists I've seen have been not innovative versus the lower level people. I shouldn't say lower level, but trained differently, but very creative, and that's what I need.
It makes me want to engage with the physical therapy students more and see if they're getting that education to be more creative, to think outside the box.
Right.
If anyone wants to jump in, you're welcome to, but or email us later, because I really would want to know if that is included in your training to think outside the box.
For people with ME/CFS and long COVID who frequently have this symptom of post-exertional malaise, so that the symptoms get worse after exercising, and they crash, and it can actually cause pretty significant long-term problems. That core message for physical therapy students is to be extremely careful with this idea of graded exercise therapy if you're dealing with people with long COVID or ME/CFS. And the preponderance of research now indicates against using therapy or graded exercise therapy as a first-line treatment, because it's more harmful than helpful. So that's a kind of a boilerplate talking point. I just want to make sure that at minimum everyone in physical therapy knows. But one of my favorite people I interviewed for this book, Dr. David Petrino, who leads the Center for Post-COVID Care at Mount Sinai in New York. He has an extremely interesting human-centered approach to physical therapy, and I'll just highlight him as a person who's worth following and emulating if you're interested in innovation in physical therapy. And he leads their rehab innovation arm prior to being part of their the pandemic and then being part of their post-COVID care center. And he was working with people who were as far disabled as having locked in, being locked in with, fully immobile due to ALS. And the other side of that, he's working with professional athletes, NBA stars. And what I found most helpful about talking with him, interviewing with him, and why he was so cutting edge on post-COVID care was his ability to understand the full range of human capacity and to listen very, very closely to each of those experiences, and then to design. He was a physical therapist and a PhD in computational science, so he was designing some of his other work was in designing human computer interfaces. So I feel like I've tried to sum up his entire career in
Maybe you can
You're
drop,
doing a good job.
yeah,
He
drop
sounds
his
amazing.
name. Drop
He
his
does.
name into the chat box.
Yeah,
It sounds
please do.
brilliant.
Yeah, let me see if I can track down a quick article summarizing some of
Yeah,
the videos.
drop
It's
that
really
in.
interesting.
And we did hear back from Stacy from the PD program. She said, we are learning to create individualized PT programs. Elizabeth, because of listening to patients like you who want to share their experiences. So they thank you and thank all of you for sharing, because it's happening. So
That's awesome. I want to go back to that, like creativity is coming up as a theme of sort of like individualized, sort of customized. I do think that's really important. And I think we are trained sometimes in medicine to fit things into this sort of pre-existing framework
Right.
of like, here are the diagnoses that exist. Right. And then if something falls outside of that, we're sort of like, well, I guess it doesn't exist. Or I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people say that. Right. And I just think we need to like really examine that and that framework that we think we have to squish things into, and actually be more open to learning what we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like the physicians need to join the patient in the uncertainty, because the patient is already living with uncertainty. And if the physician can kind of join hands there and say, hey, let's creatively solve this together, that would be part of, we think we added another year to your medical education, but I think it's really important.
But Kimberly, when you talk about physical therapists, the neurologists are not the experts. The experts are the physical therapists who are creative, really have their feet on the ground, and they really, to me, she's not a registered physical therapist, but boy, I think she's done more for me than any neurologist.
I think I raise my hand to that too, in my own experience.
So I love physical therapists when they're creative and know what they're doing.
So one of the questions that we got from the students before this discussion, this is interesting because now, let's talk about physical therapists. They're providing a lot, they're creative problem solving, but there still are limits to what they're able to provide.
Absolutely.
So they want to know, how can we support our patients within these limits? They can't go out to movies with them. We can't give them probably even hugs. And sometimes all I really want is a hug. So how can they support us within these limits?
Advocating for financial reimbursement so that patients can afford you as a physical therapist or an ancillary professional. And we all need to advocate on behalf of physical therapists for sure.
I think maybe when I hear your question, Kimberly, I think I'm thinking like not like bigger, like all providers. How can we do a better job being there for people, not just physical therapists? But the system is very limited for sure. It's so limited. but I still think we can do a lot in those sessions just by listening is huge, just listening. You know, we cut people off pretty darn quickly. And I think, you know, not feeling like we have to solve everything in that one appointment. Just curiosity. I think curiosity.
Yeah.
And the system really works against that. I'm going to say that. So we have to fight back against the system and say, even though we only have 15 minutes, we're going to try to be curious in this time. And we can always have the patient come back, and we don't have to fix it all today. I think that fix it thing traps us. We want to make people better, of course, but we also can do so much more good sometimes just by being present and listening.
And it makes me think that, you know, in life, we want to fix things. And so maybe there's a way to just start to practice, all of us, including physicians and medical students, to recognize that little fix it bell that goes off in our conversations with our partners or with our parents and with ourselves, to just build tolerance for the uncertainty. Because I think in general, we don't have a lot of stamina for uncertainty.
Because all of us here on the screen are dealing with conditions that can't be fixed.
Yeah.
No, they can be assisted with creativity, creative solutions, but it's MS, there's no cure.
No.
Not
There's no
yet.
cure.
Yeah. And we have all talked about in the past episodes about how we feel like we're frustrating for our physicians because of that, because we are not easy to fix.
And I really would like to empathize with my physician. A neurologist needs so much empathy and feeling how difficult it is to be in a working with someone who they can't do anything for, really. They can't fix anything. They're sure trying.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you guys want to, I'm noticing we have about 10 minutes left, and not that we can go in and change medical school education, but we have these students listening. Do you have advice for them as they progress through their training? Maybe it's personal advice for their own well-being, or advice to advocate with their professors for getting certain types of education. What is your advice for them as they're progressing through their education?
I think just those three simple words: shared decision making, learning how to incorporate that into your care, and having the patients advocate for themselves. I don't know how you can teach them to advocate for themselves, but if it's a shared decision-making process, you gotta come up with that together.
Other thing I'm thinking about is we need to have so much empathy for medical students. They're thrown so much material at
Yeah,
them,
and y'all can only do so much.
and to say you're not going to fix a lot of things, but I so appreciate my caregivers and my
Oh, yeah.
physicians. I really want my physicians to know how much I respect them and care for them.
Yeah. There's so many things to say, but I guess I would say, like, be present and listen, and be easy on yourself. Don't think you have to know everything and all the
Right.
answers. You're not going to. You're going to know enough to know when you need to look something up, investigate it more. You can do that alongside your patient. Be honest about what you don't know.
Right.
And I think, we're sort of trained, like, I think boundaries are, of course, important. You never want to burden your patient with your emotional needs, but be human. Like, it's okay to be human. It's okay to say that you have a feeling. And I love it when my doctors do that and are a little human with me. So that those
Yeah.
boundaries get overdone. So just question that a little bit and be human, be the human that you are that drew you to this profession.
I had a pulmonologist appointment, and my pulmonologist stood up at the end of the appointment and gave me a big hug. I love that.
Totally.
It was so endearing and wonderful, and she's young graduate from UCSF Medical School. So I thought, wow, right on. What a good
Mhm.
graduate. And thank you, thank you. I'm going to share this with her when this tapes is the tapes in real life, when it gets published in real life. And I want to thank her so much.
Ryan, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I'll highlight a couple areas that in my work as a journalist, I think that work really well with patients and with medical providers. That and depending on how people are wanting to engage with the human experience, that we do tons of in short bursts. Twitter communities are really great, and then if you prefer long form narratives, reading books about especially written from the point of view of patients. And a couple of the great recent books, one that's called Between Two Kingdoms, which is about by New York Times columnist Sylvia Jawad, her experience with cancer. It's an incredible piece of writing. And then similar, speaking about the kingdom of the healthy and the kingdom of the sick, Megan O'Rourke has a really good book just that came out this year called The Invisible Kingdom, and that's about chronic illness. It has tie into long COVID. So Megan and I have had some good conversations about how my book kind of takes off where her book ends. She has Lyme and a few other chronic illnesses, and then mine focuses more on long COVID. And I can, Kimberly and I can.
I just typed them in. I added some of my favorites too.
Share a few. Another one is a good one is Hunger by Roxane Gay, and we can go down the list with many more. But if you want to read, if you have time and interest in reading books, these are good examples. If you prefer, more fast twitch communications, there's very vibrant communities on Twitter around disability and around long COVID. So for me, it's I'm always on hashtag long COVID, hashtag MECFS, but take your pick of what diseases you're interested in. And it's a great way to monitor the real time, real life of actual patients, and you can directly ask them questions, and they'll be happy to talk with you about it. I'm sure.
I think that's a brilliant suggestion, Ryan. And there are so many chronic illness communities on social media now, and many of them are very useful. And it's not just people whining, it's really a supportive place for people to not try to cure each other, but listen to each other. And then my suggestion is make friends. You guys are a unique population because many of you have your own chronic illnesses, but make friends with other people with chronic illnesses, because you'll learn, you'll see the dirty elements of it and all of the unpolished moments. And so that type of interaction on a more intimate level, I think, will really affect the long-term vision of your practice. So we are nearing the end, and I think Jay might jump in and say thank you, but I want to say thank you on behalf of all of us for being here, and thank you to our other co-producer, Lisa Foote, who is Elizabeth's creative aide. She helps her refine and crystallize and execute all of Elizabeth's fabulous ideas. We are so grateful for all of you to be here. You can see this episode again on YouTube in about a week. Find it on unfixedmedia.com, jamesonfineart.com, and that's us. So I'm passing it over to you, Jay.
Hi, I'm Emily Hon Santos. I work with Jay. We're the co-presidents of the Disability Advocacy and Support Alliance at UCSF. And I just want to give a really, really big thank you to MS Confidential and all of the panelists who have joined us today. This has been a really incredible experience with a really informative and amazing discussion. I certainly have learned so much already. And I just really want to highlight the importance of events like these. In health professions education, we get a lot of instruction on the pathophysiology of disease, clinical reasoning, but we get very, very limited exposure to the actual patient experiences, like what it's like to live with these conditions and how to best support them through these times, and how to develop this like longitudinal personal relationship with patients and how we can best support them. And I really loved that call to supported decision making. There's some really great teachings that we've been trying to host the elective to really get this idea out as well. So thank you again so much. And to those of you in DASA's elective, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Our elective is taking a break next week, but the week after, on the 26th of October, we'll be having a really wonderful talk by Dr. Bliss Temple on the trajectories of career paths of medical students with disabilities. And she does really amazing research in that area. And again, thank you guys so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.